Here's a really good example. I've picked this, obviously, it's very, very easy. But when you talk about basically brand communities, now Facebook itself clearly is a brand, yes? And we get that. But obviously Facebook, if you look at its evolution over time, has developed basically to give an access to obviously billions now of consumers. And that's how Facebook makes its money. It makes its money by becoming, if you like, a cyber brand in its own right, which allows other brands to be parasites of it. You know, they are parasitic. They sit on Facebook and they are able to tap in to consumers. Now, the thing is the digital marketing students should get this, because when you're using Google AdWords, for example, and you're using Facebook, you know, you're actually using it in such a way as to get into the consciousness of consumers, basically, and how to profile them, and so that obviously we can predict behaviour. Well, what we can see here from this little infographic is how now, with the amount of active users that there is in Facebook, you can see how it's obviously very appealing to brands, because they can get direct access to it. And Facebook is the biggest of the lot of them, so that's why it's the biggest platform, closely followed by Twitter, and I think we'll see Twitter really taking off more and more and more as time goes on. Pinterest is quite an interesting one as a platform, but that's predominantly because it's a female-centered platform. If you look at basically the profile of the consumers who engage with it and the age. And again, when you talk about a brand, now you can never say about brands, you can talk about Coca-Cola, you can talk about Pepsi, you can talk about Apple, you can talk about any brand. Every brand, as I've said to you before, has to have a digital heartbeat. So my view is when you talk about this issue of a cyber brand, I would probably ask you, tell me a brand that's not cyber now. Can you think of a brand that doesn't have any web-based presence? And I would suggest to you probably can't. So there's a wee challenge for you. It'd be interesting when we come to tutorial. If somebody could say, here's a brand and it's not on the web at all. And I think you won't find that. Because that is the whole notion for me, is that every brand has to have a digital cyber presence, a digital heartbeat. I always talk about this issue, you have to be digital or die. So clearly see, Facebook is one of the classic examples because it has such a massive audience that we can tap into. Now here's a really good thing when we talk about what brands are talking about now about this issue, a way of like gating, just classic liking, and they're really talking, let me go back there. What they're really talking about here is that the issue of content. Now we've mentioned this before, content is absolutely key in how we have to engage with our fans, but of course that content has to speak specifically to the brand essence that you're trying to portray. So obviously, you know, there's no point in pushing out something of a particular brand to a particular demographic or, of people who clearly don't tap into that. It doesn't tap into their cultural capital. I'll mention that later on when we look at the third section. The focus, though, as it says here, is this issue of driving engagement amongst current fans. And this idea is instead of merely acquiring new ones, if you look at this, there's a classic thing in marketing theory, period, when they talk about, you know, marketing orientation is the phrase they tend to use. So in other words, is rather than you getting £20 off of a consumer once, like one transaction as a brand, well, that's fine. But a lot of people say, well, why can't we get like £5 off of you 10 times? And if we can do that, then that's a marketing orientation. You know, this one hit isn't any use. So what we try to do is we try to build a relationship, an emotional, a social relationship with the consumer. And that's the way brands get you. That's where they get the loyalty. Here's a classic one here. So what does it mean for marketeers? Well, the classic thing, and I think I've said this before, is again, if you think of the concept of visualization, if you think of the notion of when we talk about, you know, the oculocentric society and the techno dependency, what we're really looking at is we're looking at visual content. Visual content matters, and increasingly, this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So when you talk about content, and when you talk about any brand, doesn't matter whether it's, as I say, it could be anything, you know, Coca-Cola to Jimmy Choo shoes, you know, or it could be an event like Coachella, or it could be another event like, say, the World Cup or whatever. We're always talking about emotional engagement, and we're looking at visual content. So we have to have something that's either photos, and I would increasingly say the shift is more towards video, and more importantly now moving towards interactive video or digital content. And then augmented reality and VR is going to come in the future as well. Again, frequency is the key, okay? You have to constantly engage and you have to constantly update your content. Now, the digital marketeers in the room, they will know this. They'll just nod and say, yeah, we know this, and it's absolutely important. But the key thing, of course, is you've got to think of how your cyber brand interacts online, okay? And this is this concept of deeper engagement, okay? There's a guy called Seth Godin, and he talks about, and he's a famous leadership management guru, and he lives online, Seth Godin, and he constantly talks about how he believes he could go to Australia and speak to some of his Facebook friends, as he would call them, and the level of engagement or the emotional content and sociability that he's built up with them is such that he says they would let me sleep in their couch. And though he's never met them face to face, that's what he's saying. He says the level of engagement is such that he believes that he would be able to do that. And that's exactly what brands are trying to do. They're trying to become almost not just your friend. It's back to this issue. They're looking to build up valuable, content, to really get into your heart, if you like. Here's a good one here about when we talk about the drivers of engagement. I won't read them out. You can read them for yourself. But the most powerful is the issue of social benefits. When we're ever talking about engaging people, anything that's emphasizing notions of sociability and emotion again is the one thing that we actually have to really push. So when you think of brands, these are things that we want to actually think about. Obviously, the things like negative feelings and stuff like this, brands tend to deal with that in a different way. They come back and they address that straight away. Well, the good ones do. They address any negative press, if you like, they're getting.